The Shalach HaKadosh tells us that when a holiday falls out during a week, so the portion of the week that we read that week has a connection with the holiday. And being that Mikeitz falls out around Chanukah, there must be at least one connection with the holiday of Chanukah and the portion that we are reading. The verse opens up by saying that that Pharaoh had a dream. What was the dream that Pharaoh had? He saw how 7 fat and beautiful cows in appearance and robust flesh came out, and they were grazing in the marshland. And then his dream continued, and behold, it says, 7 other cows emerged after them out of the river, of ugly appearance and gaunt flesh, and they stood next to the cows on the bank of the river. And then it says, these ugly cows consumed the robust cows, and yet they remained ugly, and they remained very gaunt. This was the dream. And eventually Joseph comes to the scene and to the forefront, and Joseph says, what is the meaning of these dreams? That you are to know that there will be 7 years of plenty, that Egypt will have a lot of food for 7 years, and after those 7 years of plenty, there will be 7 years of famine. But the famine will be so terrible that you will forget the 7 good years. It will consume the 7 years of plenty. So this is the basic story of the dream of Pharaoh. And after that dream, Joseph became the viceroy. So Pharaoh has a dream. The word dream in Hebrew is cholem. However, the word cholem are the same exact letters as the nekuda, which is the vowel that is called the cholam. The cholam is a dot that we find on top of the letter. That is called a cholam. So in other words, we can read this passage, Ufarei cholam, and Pharaoh had a cholam. He had the vowel called the cholam, the O. What is the meaning that Pharaoh had a cholam? The Zohar tells us that the word paroi, or Pharaoh, represents the power to reveal one's essence. And the word cholim, which is the nekuda, this vowel represents the vowel of strength. For the translation of cholam is strength. And furthermore, we find that cholam has the gematria of 78. 78 is the same gematria as the word melach, which is salt. It's also the same letters as salt. And furthermore, the word mochal, to forgive, are also these same 3 letters, and therefore have the same gematria of 78. 78 is 3 times the name of God's name. 3 times God's name is 78. For the name of God is 26. The Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Tetragrammaton, equals 26. 26 times 3 is 78. So in the word cholam, we have God's name 3 times. And the Talmud tells us when you do something 3 times, it becomes a chazaka, becomes very strong. So here we see that this vowel of the cholam is a very strong vowel. Interestingly, that when we eat bread, we know that it's accustomed to take the bread and dip it into salt 3 times. One of the reasons is because the word melach, which is salt, equals God's name 3 times. For the name of God is 26. 26 times 3 is 78. So by the fact we take the bread 3 times into the salt, we have 3 times God's name, which equals melach, salt. What is salt? Salt is a preservative. Years ago, before refrigeration, we would pack the food into salt, and that would give it a longer shelf life. And similarly, in the Beis Hamikdash, we find that every korban, every sacrifice required salt. And God calls it bris melach, the covenant of salt, which is a bris olam, an everlasting covenant, implying that when you bring the sacrifice on the altar, it's not a one-time act, but rather the sacrifice, which is the good deed that you're doing, is eternal. It's forever and ever. And just like salt withstands changes in time, so too the mitzvah that you do is something that is forever and ever. And this is also the power of mochal, the same letters as chalom. Mochal means to forgive. To forgive someone demands a lot of strength. It's not easy to forgive. Somebody hurt you. But yet, if you're able to go to a deeper place, a place of strength, a place of cholam, you have the ability to forgive others for what they did to you. There's an interesting prayer that we say before we go to bed, and that is, I forgive anyone that harmed me throughout the day, in this Gilgul, in this body, or a different carnation. Because forgiving means that you are able to go to a very strong place. And similarly, we find in the Torah that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, on his chest wore 12 stones. And one of the stones that he wore was called the achlama. The achlama are the same letters as chalom. The achlama is the amethyst, and it's a violet stone, and it's considered to be a stone that gives strength to the heart. So again, we find how this idea of strength is consistent through all these different words that are made up of these 3 letters. So the Torah tells us, Ufadei cholim, that this portion is a very powerful portion. It gives us the ability to find our inner strength. And this inner strength, this power, is revealed to each and every one of us here in this Parsha. And what happens after that? Pharaoh has 2 dreams. One is the dream of the cows. And then he has another dream, as the Torah says, that he fell asleep and dreamt a second time, and behold, 7 ears of grain were sprouting on a single stalk. And again, behold, these stalks were very robust, and after that there was another stalk that had on it 7 ears of very thin and scorched by the east wind, and they swallowed up the larger stalk. And again, the thin stalk remained thin, even though it consumed a larger stalk. And all of this is read before Chanukah. And who saves the day? That is Joseph. There's a machlokes in the Gemara, we spoke about this. The first night of Chanukah, how many candles are we to light? Do we light 8 candles or 1 candle? Beis Shammai says the first night of Chanukah we light 8 candles. The second night of Chanukah we light 7. Hillel says the first night we light 1, the second night we light 2. We increase. Who does the halacha follow? Who do we follow? We follow the opinion of Hillel. And this concept is hinted in the name of Chanukah. For Chanukah stands for Chanukah, Ches, Neiros, V'halacha Kebeis Hillel. 8 candles, and the law is like Hillel. That what? We increase every night, we don't decrease. Pharaoh is the antithesis to holiness. Pharaoh is the antithesis to spirituality. So his dreams decrease. The first dream, he dreams about 7 cows. The next dream, he dreams about stalks. He goes from the animal kingdom to the vegetable kingdom. He goes down a level. He goes from 8 candles to 7 candles to 6 candles. Who saves the day? That's Joseph. Joseph means to increase, to add. He becomes the viceroy. He now becomes the ruler of Egypt. And he saves the day by giving food and becoming the breadwinner for not only Egypt, but all of the surrounding countries. Joseph means to add. That is the halacha of Chanukah. We have to increase. The first night 1, the second night 2, the third night 3. Now, the meaning of Chanukah, what does Chanukah really mean? Historically, Chanukah means they rested. Chanukah, Chanu Chavhei, they rested on the 25th day of the month of Kislev. But Chanukah also means and comes from the word chinuch, education. It's a time of education. And Chanukah also comes from the word of Chanukat or Chanukas HaMizbeach, which means to inaugurate the altar, to inaugurate the temple. Because after the Syrian Greek army came into the Beis HaMikdash, they contaminated the altar. The altar had to be rebuilt, and the entire temple needed to be purified. So now there was a rededication to the Holy Temple. And therefore Chanukah is a time that we rededicate ourselves to chinuch, to Jewish education, which explains the custom of giving Chanukah geld. Chanukah geld is not something that just happens in this generation or a generation prior, but Chanukah geld, we know already that the Rebbe Rashab in the later 1800s would give Chanukah geld every year to his son, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. And this was done for many, many generations. The Rebbe's father says we have a hint in the Gemara, in the Talmud, that there was Chanukah geld. Because the Gemara says, in the Tractate of Shabbos, page 22, side A, it says like this, Asur lahartzois mois keneged ner Chanukah. It says that you're not allowed to count money near the Chanukah candles, because the Chanukah candles, in contrast to the Shabbos candles, is not allowed to be used for one's benefit. It's only coming to show the miracle that God performed for the Jewish people. So don't use it to count money. Why did the Gemara choose money? Why did the Gemara choose something else? Because on Chanukah it's customary to give Chanukah geld. So the kids would go over to the candles and start counting how much money they got from their daddy and mommy. So therefore, says the Gemara, don't use the Chanukah candles to count your Chanukah geld. So we see that this concept of gifts and money to children go back even to the days of the Talmud and beyond that. What's the concept of Chanukah geld on Chanukah? Why do we give Chanukah geld on Chanukah? And not only one night or 2 nights, but as the Rebbe said, we should give our children every day of Chanukah, Chanukah geld. And every day of Chanukah, we should give gifts to our children. Why every day? And what is this idea of giving them money? So we find there's a Jewish custom that when a child is brought to the yeshiva for the first time, you wrap him up in the talis, and when he comes into the school, you throw candies at him. And the story is told that the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, when his grandson, the Rebbe Rashab, went into Cheder, went into school for the first time, he threw candies at his grandson. And he said that these candies are from Malach Michael, from Angel Michael. Angel Michael is throwing these candies. And the Rebbe Rashab was very excited about it, and he held it in his pocket, but he didn't want to eat it because if Angel Michael is sending down these candies, I'm not going to go eat it. These are precious. So therefore, right before Pesach, the Tzemach Tzedek said, where'd you put those candies? You have to eat it up because Pesach is coming. So he ate the candies at that time. And the Rebbe expounds on the story, and he says that you can't lie to a child. You can't say it's coming from Angel Michael when you're throwing it on your own. Children know black and white. If you start lying to children, they think it's okay to lie. So you have to be very careful when you speak to children. You must always tell them the truth. So how can the Tzemach Tzedek, the holy Tzemach Tzedek, tell his grandson that you are to know that these candies are from Angel Michael? Said the Rebbe, that's the truth. That we, the parents and grandparents, when we throw candies at our children or grandchildren, when they go to yeshiva for the first time, we become emissaries from Angel Michael. And we know the halacha that a shliach, an emissary, is like the person himself. So therefore, it's true when we say that Malach Michael, Angel Michael, is throwing the candies at the children. But what is this concept of throwing candies at the children? And the answer is, there's a verse that says, Kol hascholis koshes. The Talmud tells us that all beginnings are difficult. We know in our own life, when we start something new, it's very difficult. You go to a new school, you're nervous, there's anxiety, what am I going to do? And you're reluctant to go there, and then once you go there, till you get into things, it takes time. And in truth, every Friday afternoon, we have the same problem. We have to take a quantum leap from the weekday to Shabbos. No matter how long Friday is, if Shabbos starts 4:11 in the afternoon or starts 8:30 in the afternoon, you're running like crazy till the last second until Shabbos starts. You're always never ready. You're never ready. Why is that? Because Shabbos is a new beginning. And when you have a new beginning, you have to have a quantum leap. And it's difficult. Kolas cholos koshes. And therefore, to be able to go into this new beginning, this new lifestyle, this new life, this new type of education, we need to give that person a catapult. We need to give that person an additional charge, an additional gift, an additional blessing to be able to move now into that new location. So therefore, when a child goes into yeshiva, these candies that you throw at him are the gifts that you give the child that inspires him to want to learn Torah and to have the strength to learn Torah. And similarly, we know that you're allowed to bribe children. The Rambam says you're allowed to tell a child, if you study this, I will give you that. Or if you learn the Mishnayos by heart, I'll give you $10. Or if you learn a Tanya, Pedic of Tanya by heart, I'll give you another $10. You're allowed to bribe children to study Torah. So this is the idea of giving Chanukah geld on Chanukah. Because Chanukah, as we said earlier, means education. It also means inauguration and renewal. And therefore, to renew the commitment to Torah education, we now give our children additional gifts and blessings and candies from Angel Michael to inspire them to now rededicate themselves ever more to the study of Torah and Yiddishkeit and God. So this is the concept that we find hinted in this week's Parsha. That the portion begins, Ufare cholim, that Pharaoh had the vowel of the cholam. We said earlier that the cholam is a very powerful vowel. It represents strength. That here we are given additional strength to be able to reveal our inner powers, to rededicate ourselves to Torah and to mitzvahs. However, the Torah then says that there were 7 fat cows and 7 thin cows, and that the thin cows consumed the fat cows and they remained thin. How do we connect this with Chanukah? We know that in the Beis Hamikdash there was a menorah, and this menorah was lit every day. Every day in the afternoon, before sunset, the Kohen would light the menorah. The menorah in the Beis Hamikdash had only 7 branches. And every day, all 7 branches were lit. You didn't light one branch Sunday and a second branch Monday, and by Friday you lit 6, and Saturday night you lit the 7th. Every day you lit all 7 branches. Comes along Chanukah, and we celebrate the victory of the Maccabees, the defeat of the Syrian Greek army. And we say that because there was a miracle in the Beis Hamikdash, that the Maccabees came in and they found only 1 cruse of oil that was enough to last for 1 day, and it lasted for 8 days. So now we light the menorah for 8 days. First of all, in truth, if there was enough oil to last 8 days, 1 day, if there was enough oil to last 1 day, and it lasted 8 days, how many days was the miracle? Only 7, not 8. So we should light a 7-prong menorah, not an 8-prong menorah. It was a 7-day miracle, not an 8-day miracle. And furthermore, if we are supposedly reminding ourselves of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, every day they lit the menorah consistently, all of the prongs of the menorah. All the branches of the menorah were lit every day. Yet Chanukah, we light the first night only 1, the second night 2, and we increase each night, and only the last night do we light up all the branches of the menorah. So why this discrepancy? So the Rebbe explains that in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, especially in the time of the first Beis Hamikdash, the Jewish people, it says, were very wealthy. Ish tachas gafnoiv, ish tachas teinosoi. Each man and woman sat under their vineyard, and they sat under the fig tree. They had tremendous wealth. This tremendous wealth comes from spiritual wealth. That during the time of the first Holy Temple, they were very knowledgeable in the Torah, and they were very committed to the observance of the commandments. And because they were spiritually wealthy, so God blessed them that they were also monetarily wealthy. However, during the Second Holy Temple, and especially around the time of the story of Chanukah, which was around 167 before the Common Era, at that time the Jewish people fell into a spiritual slumber. They fell into darkness. And therefore we find the discrepancy of how we light the menorah. In the first Beis Hamikdash, and until the time of Chanukah, when the Jewish people were spiritually greater, so it was enough to light a 7-prong menorah, because 7 represents nature. So as long as we lit up every single day of the week, it was enough to bring spiritual inspiration to the world. And it was done before it got dark. It was done in the afternoon, because we did not need to light up the darkness. However, after the Jewish people fell into a spiritual low, and darkness pervaded the world, so now the Jewish people decided they wanted to become Hellenists and to become similar and to fraternize with the Hellenists and the Syrian Greeks at that time. Came along the miracle of Chanukah, and they realize now that in order to bring light into the world, we have to bring the menorah into the streets. We have to light up the dark streets. And only then can we truly bring light into the world. And furthermore, as long as this darkness is still here, lighting 1 candle or 7 candles every night is not enough. Because 7 is nature. And consistency is only good when things are normal. When things have turned sour, when things are bad, when things are dark, we have to increase. So if I increase and there's still darkness in the world, it means I have to increase even more. and if there's still darkness in the world, I must increase even more. So therefore, we're constantly increasing. And even after Chanukah is over, we have to still continue to increase. Because the number 8 means infinity. It means etc. It means a continuation. It's not about the 7-day cycle. On the contrary, 8 is beyond nature. It's beyond that cycle. It reminds us that even after Chanukah is over, we have to continue to light up those candles. What is the meaning of lighting a candle? King Solomon tells us, Ki ner mitzvah v'Torah, that the flame of a candle is a study of Torah, and the candle itself represents the observance of a good deed. Every day we have to increase in these good deeds. Every day we have to increase in bringing light and warmth to the world around us. And when we do this every day, we truly have Chanukah. Then we truly have this miracle of lights. Then we have true peace and rest from darkness and from evil. However, it's up to us to constantly light these candles. We speak about dreams, the power of dreams. The dreams that we read about in this week's Parsha is really a continuation of the dreams of last week's Parsha. And there we find 2 interesting dreams. The dream of the butler and the dream of the baker. They both have a dream and they're confused. And Joseph in prison sees how these 2 prisoners are haunted. And he approaches them and he says, can I help you? What's bothering you? And they tell him, we had a dream last night. He says, tell me your dream. So the butler said, well, I saw in my dream a vine, and there were 3 clusters on the vine. And I took these clusters and I squeezed it into the cup of Pharaoh. Okay. Joseph listens and he says, yes. The 3 clusters represent 3 days, and in 3 days Pharaoh will have a birthday party, and you will be restored to your previous position. Once again, you will be the butler of Pharaoh. The baker hears how the butler got a good report, so he decided to say his dream. And he said, I saw 3 baskets on my head. And I saw how birds were coming and eating from these baskets of delicious cakes and delicacies. And Joseph said, yes, that's true. In 3 days, Pharaoh will have a birthday party. And he will make a decision what to do with you. And he will hang. My grandfather, Rabbi Jacob Jehech, of blessed memory, once asked, what is the difference between the 2 dreams? Why is it the dream of the butler is a dream of life, and the dream of the baker is a dream of death? And my grandfather said the following. He said, it's very simple. If you look into the dream of the baker, it's a passive dream. He's doing nothing. There are baskets of cakes and bread on his head. A dream of passivity is a dream of death. In the dream of the butler, you see that the butler goes and takes the clusters of grapes and he squeezes the grapes into the cup of Pharaoh. This is a dream of action. A dream of action is a dream of life. And then he said a story of a rabbi, a famous rabbi in Panovich, who was known for making and building yeshivas. He was called the Panovich Rav. And they once asked him, how come you're so successful in building so many yeshivas and synagogues and institutions when other rabbis your age haven't done anything close to what you have accomplished? What is the secret to your success? And the rabbi of Ponevezh said, the Ponevezh Rav said, I dreamt a lot. You dreamt a lot. Everybody dreams. Yet you are successful and they are not. And so the Ponevezh Rav said, yes. When I dream with my eyes opened. When they dream with their eyes closed. Dreams are a very powerful thing. Chaloim are the same letters as chaloim or cholam, and melach, which means strength and eternality. However, for this dream to be a dream of strength, and for this dream to be true for all eternity, we have to act on this dream. We have to take the candles and light the candles. We have to do the mitzvah. It's not enough that we are excited about the history of the past or the miracle of the past that happened in the Beis HaMikdash. That's a nice story. It's a nice dream. But for the dream to become a reality, which is to transform darkness into light, and to make the world a brighter place and a happier place, and a world of peace and tranquility with the coming of Mashiach, this is a dream of life. We have to act upon this dream. And by lighting candles, we are given now additional strength to once again rededicate ourselves to this education and to this commitment to God and to Torah, and to bring about the building of the third Holy Temple, which will bring light and joy and tranquility to the land of Israel and to all the cities and countries throughout the entire globe, with the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days.